Universal Music is suing Anthropic while YouTube is trying to get the record labels to go in on it with an AI project. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in around 5 minutes. Today, we kick off with yet another lawsuit around the way that AI models have been trained. This time, however, it's not a group of authors, it is the viciously lawyered up music industry, specifically Universal Music Group, filing a $75 million lawsuit against Anthropic AI. They argue that Anthropic has perpetrated mass copyright infringement in serving up their lyrics to people who ask. Alright, so let's get into some specifics. This was actually a trio of music publishers, UMG, Concord Music Group, and ABK Co., and the suit was filed in Tennessee federal court. The specific accusation was, quote, systemic and widespread infringement by copying and distributing lyrics from at least 500 songs, including Katy Perry, the Rolling Stones, and Beyoncé. The complaint says Anthropic has neither sought nor secured publishers' permission to use their valuable copyrighted works in this way. Just as Anthropic does not want its code taken without its authorization, neither do music publishers or any other copyright owners want their works to be exploited without permission. Now, in terms of what their evidence is, they basically asked Claude what the lyrics to Katy Perry's Roar were, which it provided not without a few errors, but mostly. They say that this undercuts music lyric aggregators and other websites who have explicitly licensed those works, and that by not licensing this content, Anthropic is, quote, depriving publishers and their songwriters of control over the copyrighted works and the hard-earned benefits of their creative endeavors. They say it's also competing unfairly against those website developers that respect the copyright law and pay for licenses. Now, I will, for the sake of this piece, bite my tongue about what I view as the utter stupidity of having to license the ability to print song lyrics on the web. But it feels to me like this lawsuit isn't really about that. This is yet one more in the line of lawsuits that are frankly trying to get their way to the Supreme Court to figure out how to deal with copyright in AI training in general. Now, The Hollywood Reporter suggests that this specific case and the way that Universal Music Group has architected it is meant to cut directly at what they would expect the defense to be, which is, of course, fair use. The reason that this might be harder to defend with fair use is that since other websites are licensing lyrics to be able to print them, this actually potentially hurts the business opportunities of the publisher. Now, so far, Anthropic hasn't responded to requests for comment, but it's clear at this point that a major part of the AI Lab's job is going to be fighting these copyright battles until it gets actually sorted out, either in the courts or through some sort of regulatory policy, but frankly, much more likely in the courts. It was then interesting to see, however, that even as Anthropic was being sued by the labels, YouTube is apparently trying to work with the labels to specifically get access to rights for their songs to train a new AI-powered voice replication tool. Writes Bloomberg, who broke the news, YouTube is developing a tool powered by artificial intelligence that would let creators record audio using the voices of famous musicians. The video site has approached music companies about obtaining the rights to songs it could use to train the tool, although major label records have yet to sign off on the deal. Now, if you've listened to me with any regularity, you've heard me talk about exactly this before. I literally cannot imagine that the way that this gets resolved in part is that we end up with a handful of rights-approved venues or rights-approved models through which people who want to create music that sounds like Drake or Sia or Bob Dylan or whoever can actually do so legally. One of the things about the music industry is that they are extremely good at adapting to the threat of new technology and then co-opting it in a way that reinforces their supremacy at the center of the industry. That was the byproduct of Napster into the streaming era, and I would be shocked if anything different happened here. That doesn't mean, of course, that there won't be bootlegged versions and people training their own models on artists without their permission or without the rights approval. But the bet will be that the legitimate use case that's willing to pay for the privilege in some way or another will be a heck of a lot higher than the pirated use case, and that sort of will work out better for everyone. Meanwhile, yet another story of lawsuits against AI training. Former Governor Mike Huckabee, along with a group of other Christian authors, have filed a lawsuit in New York federal court arguing that their works were used unlawfully in the training of models from OpenAI and others. This particular lawsuit targets Meta, Microsoft, and even Bloomberg LP. Interestingly, this threads a little bit of a line. The plaintiffs here say, while using books as part of datasets is not inherently problematic, using pirated or stolen books does not fairly compensate authors and publishers for their work. So I guess if Meta and Microsoft had just bought a copy of each of these books, it would have been fine with them. I'm not really sure, but it is an interesting wrinkle in this larger conversation. Now let's move on to some very, very different topics. First, Amazon has announced 2 new types of robots that are being integrated into their delivery and fulfillment systems. This news comes directly from Amazon in a blog post written by Scott Dresser, the VP of Amazon Robotics. First robotic system is called Sequoia, and it's designed to improve how warehouses fulfill customer orders. So far, it's operating at one of their fulfillment centers in Houston, Texas. Dresser writes, Sequoia allows us to identify and store inventory we receive at our fulfillment centers up to 75% faster than we can today. This means we can list items for sale on Amazon.com more quickly, and when orders are placed, Sequoia also reduces the time it takes to process an order through a fulfillment center by up to 25%, which improves our shipping predictability and increases the number of goods we can offer for same-day or next-day shipping. Now, the other robot that they announced was a bipedal, quote, mobile manipulator solution. In other words, a type of robot that can move while also grasping and handling items. This one is called Digit and is a collaboration with Agility Robotics. They argue that robots like these are going to be best used in collaboration with humans, specifically on hyper-repetitive tasks. For example, they write, our initial use for this technology will be to help employees with tote recycling, a highly repetitive process of picking up and moving empty totes once inventory has been completely picked out of them. Moving on to another development in the product space, there is a ton of innovation right now in and around voice cloning. 11 Labs, Wondercraft, and others have all come out with voice dubbing for YouTube and podcast content recently. And now PlayHT has announced PlayHT 2.0 Turbo. They call it the fastest conversational AI text-to-speech model. I think this is an area that is going to have a lot of impact in how content gets produced, and so I'm always interested to keep track of the updates in the space. Now, closing out more on the policy and macro side of things, FBI Director Christopher Wray discussed AI earlier this week in a conference for the US and its closest intelligence allies. He said that AI has already been successfully used to amplify terrorist propaganda, and that terrorist groups are very focused on trying to get around AI safeguards. Said his British counterpart Ken McCallum, quote, if you are experienced in security, you would be unwise to rely on these controls to remain impregnable. There is clear risk that some of these systems can be put to uses that their makers did not intend. Relatedly, another New York Times piece on AI today tells the story of a group of researchers who found that AI safeguards are not so safe at all. The paper is called Fine-Tuning Aligned Language Models Compromises Safety Even When Users Do Not Intend to. And basically they're pointing out that there are safety costs associated with the type of customized fine-tuning that many models are going through right now as they go into production for various real-world applications. They write, our red teaming studies find that the safety alignment of LLMs can be compromised by fine-tuning with only a few adversarially designed training examples. For instance, we jailbreak GPT 3.5 Turbo safety guardrails by fine-tuning it on only 10 such examples at a cost of less than 20 cents via OpenAI's APIs, making the model responsive to nearly any harmful instruction. Disconcertingly, our research also reveals that even without malicious intent, simply fine-tuning with benign and commonly used datasets can also inadvertently degrade the safety alignment of LLMs, although to a lesser extent. The concern was summed up by Scale AI's Riley Goodside, who said, this is a very real concern for the future. We do not know all the ways this can go wrong. But for now, I will leave you to ponder all the ways that it can go wrong. I, of course, appreciate you guys listening or watching as always. Next up, the main AI breakdown.